okay, at 3:47 in the morning, if someone wakes you up, cold in your eyes, and I say, yo, video, audio, image or written, what are you creating? Whatever your answer is, that's what you create every single day. I literally got sick, like was in the hospital sick, and I couldn't really figure out why. In between that time, that's when I found E, and the later version of me getting sick was that like turning point of I need to get out of this 9 to 5. This just isn't me. And that did not come with an easy road. Like that was a 30K cut that I took from my job. And then of course, I was married at the time. And that transition of everything that was happening, it actually caused a divorce. And yet I still felt the freest.
What does it take for me to go from the 10,000 to 100,000? Like when we're really getting up there in the numbers and it's like a brand.
One of the biggest lessons that I learned was that
Today's guest is Nicky Saunders, and to kind of give some context, Nicky is the content strategist, and the story is just so interesting. Someone that was in the Navy for years and years and years, then goes into a banking job in IT that they just don't like, it's not for them, navigates through that and becomes Eric Thomas's social media manager, the person that's managing all of his media, takes that account from 300,000 to over 2 million followers in 18 months. And came on the show today to break down exactly what it takes to build an audience and a brand on social media. And I use the word brand intentionally. I think really the thing that you're going to get from this episode is not only the story of someone that did it themselves, but the practical information of how you can go from having 0 posts online and nothing, not a trace of you on the internet, to building a loyal, committed audience that you're also able to make money from it and a living from it that just loves you for being you. So such a fun episode to record. Thank you to Nicky for coming on, and let's get to it. You're watching the Callum Johnson Show. First time we spoke on the phone, I asked you, I was like, how would you describe what you do?
Yeah.
And you said, I'm the content strategist.
Yeah.
There's also the context of you worked with Eric Thomas, the hip hop preacher, building his social media following.
Yeah.
Taking it from 300,000 followers to over 2 million followers.
Yep.
And so I'm going to ask you that same question. How would you describe what Nicky Saunders does?
So it's funny because I was on a recent live and with Curtis King, and he's like, yo, you're like the content whisperer. I was like, what does that even mean? He's like, remember the dog whisperer, Caesar? And he's like, I was like, yeah. He's like, you're that. I was like, I'm just going to run with that because I really don't know what it means. But for me, my biggest thing is just the message and how do we make it the most authentic, right? Because I'm realizing in the season that we're in, it's like everybody who is just themselves, it works. I think we're over the whole certain kind of character. And so my whole job is to make people feel super comfortable and super seen that when we are talking about their content, it just comes out natural. Like they're creating in a very easy way, they're distributing it in a very easy way, and so that's my whole thing. Like when I look back at all the things that I've done, it's not necessarily okay. I have the latest tips and tricks and updates and everything, even though I do, but that's not really the thing. It's really looking at how do I become a fan of the brand, and like even telling the person how can you become a fan of your own brand to where it's like, I'm doing everything based off like what just feels good to me, what feels good for the people, what feels just like wholesome and pure than necessarily gimmicky and like trendy and everything like that, because that works for a certain amount of time. But what I'm realizing with the longevity, even with E and everybody else, it's more of like, how do we stay the same way? E.T. is the yelling guy, as I like to call him. Like, he yells, he'll make you feel like you could go through a wall. Like, how do we make sure he's in that, the content that comes out is in that place all the time where you're like, okay, it's like 11 o'clock at night and I really don't feel like going through a wall. I really need to go to sleep, actually. I know not to watch him no more. So it's more of that. Like, how do we make sure, like, when I talk to you, when I talk to anybody, like, how do I make sure that you feel comfortable and natural, but like not gimmicky?
You know what's interesting? So like in all the conversations that we've had,
Yeah.
I think there's been recurring themes. There's been things that you've mentioned again and again. And one of them is being authentic,
Yeah.
being yourself,
Yeah.
having fun being yourself, being
Yeah.
comfortable. And so I want to get deeper into your story. And so why is that so important for you? Why is there such an emphasis on the being authentic part of it?
I think because when looking back at growing up, I didn't really know like what I was going to be and like really who I was. Being an only child, you're kind of isolated. So you create your own world, but then when you go outside of the world, you're like, what am I doing and how do I stand out, right? So being an only child, shout out to my mom, but very overprotective child. Black and Puerto Rican, so I wasn't black enough. My mom never taught me Spanish because in hopes that me and my dad would always talk and things like that. So I never learned Spanish, but I was the one that was going to the Puerto Rican Day parades in the front. And they're like, why are you so... You are the most Puerto Rican person that is not fully Puerto Rican that doesn't speak Spanish. This is the wildest thing, right? So, of course, being LGBTQ plus, then trying to figure that out, especially when I was growing up in a world that it wasn't necessarily as loud as it is, right? I was in the Navy, and it was still in that era of like, we really don't talk about it. Like it was like the ending of the don't ask, don't tell situation. But then it was like, we don't have necessarily the problem, but we just don't talk about it. So I never really felt like myself until after the Navy, until I got with, ET and things like that and really saw him being like, this is who I am and you're going to rock with it, right? And even getting with E because of how, he's a pastor, he's extremely Christian, Seventh Adventist, like, I still didn't. I was like, oh, I can't get too close to him. My man doesn't even like my kind. Like that's not even, That's another thing. Like I grew up Catholic, and because of my sexuality, I was like, I always felt like an outcast. So, okay, where do I really stand out in the world, right? And when I started seeing E be the way he is, and then when I really started paying attention to the people who were actually standing out, I'm like, they got an audience of just them doing that? Oh, there's probably other people that have the same situations as me, right? But even when I started, I still led with like expertise first, right? Because I still didn't want, I'm a what I call like a public-private person, right? I'm outside online, not really outside, I'm an introvert. I'm outside, but you really don't know my public, like what I really think about and things like that, because I was like, if I say too much, they may think this. Like the funniest thing was I recently got engaged, and if I wasn't so confident in the way that I am now, that was the most followers I lost when I announced my engagement to my fiance, right? Most beautiful thing, everybody loved it, but it was the most following that goes down. And I was like, I can understand why people don't show their authentic selves, because there's still a lot of people who don't accept certain things. And if you're not strong enough, like if you don't know who you are, it really can mess with you. Because it messed with me for a little. I was like, as much as good I do in this world, like, how do you not? So in that, just looking at the journey of things of, damn, I've never felt like accepted. I've never felt truly like in a community, in like a group of people, even growing up, that not having that many friends, to now, because of the community that I've built and just showing up, like now I feel like there's a purpose and a place, and there's people who really need what I have, because I'm just like, at this point, you just gonna hear me and we gonna show my dog, you know what I mean, who breaks everything in my life, but that's another story in itself. You're gonna see my fiance at times, you're gonna see the behind the scenes, and there are people who like stop me and be like, yo, thank you. Like, we were at the Think Media situation a couple of weeks ago, And one of the guys who has, I mean, millions of followers, has thousands of views on his live streams every single time, was like, you make me want to be more authentic. Just because of how I was like, do you know your stats? Do you know? But I realized that there's different things that are important to people, you know, and that he may have felt that I have to be this certain kind of way, but I'd rather be. Let me just come with the jean jacket and a hat and some like, I don't want to be in this suit. And it's really refreshing. I really wish I had this type of confidence before. Well, not, I don't want to even say confidence. The level of I don't care before, but you know, you got to go through the journey.
Yeah. You know what? That's so interesting because, and even just meeting you in person today, it's like you're so comfortable being yourself. Mm-hmm. It's like the fitted hat, the tracksuit, the Ray-Bans. I commented on your Crenshaw Nipsey Hussle hoodie. And so I'm sure there's people that watch you and people that are listening that are like, I can't believe that there's a moment when she wasn't like this. Like there was a moment where she did care what people thought. And so can you take us back to that moment? Like when you reflect back on the journey, is there an experience where you were like, in your mind, it almost typifies the pinnacle of you just being caring about what other people think, like being uncomfortable in how, I don't know, almost like in your own skin in the way that you were?
So looking back, that's a really good question. Looking back, I could even think from like elementary school, you have like the popular kids. And I was the quiet one. So I seemed as if, but I could fight was the weirdest thing, right? I'm a quiet one, but I'm fight. I'm 5'2". People don't know. I'm very short. I may look tall on the internet. I promise you I'm 5'2", right? But I was the short one that could fight and like the security guard for everybody, right? And so if I was to do anything outside of that context, I felt like they would say something like, that's not your place. When I went to the Navy, you had to stay a certain kind of role, or there would be, it's like a big school. So I always felt like people were talking about me in so many different ways. It wasn't until after I got out of the Navy and really like be around other people who were just themselves that I'm just like, oh, wait, you get paid how much to go? Like, I swear, E has changed my life, not necessarily from a moment of like the opportunity, but really seeing the fact that he's a guy that could wear a hat, some J's and some shorts to a corporate gig and get paid over $100K to tell them about themselves, right? And I'm like, oh, I'm doing this all the way wrong. And looking back at, we're told and grow, like, get a 9-to-5, listen to your boss, listen to these things. And I was always a rebel, and like I never listened. That's why my mom was like, "Why are you going to the Navy? Because you don't even listen to me. You don't listen to anybody. You just do what you do." But I realized that looking back, I needed the discipline to do what I do, but the awareness from E that you can be whoever you want to be. That sounds so army-ish, godly, or some military thing right there. But you could really just show up as you, as God made you, with the discipline, and the level that you can go to now is like sky is the limit. And it's crazy to see that. And I never thought that because of, and this is why I love social media, because of a phone, I could feel like myself. That's the weirdest thing. It's like, I don't have to wait for the cameras from a TV show, a movie, a radio thing. Like, I can get on my phone and just be me, press publish, run away, because I am an introvert, so I don't even know what I'm doing in life. Run away, come back, and people are rooting for me. People are like, yo, this is great. This just changed my life. You just gained me this many followers. You just got me this opportunity. I just made this amount of money. I'm like, game over. I'm cool. But the before the Navy, before even in that in between of like getting out of the Navy, and that, because that's a scary time when you transition from Navy to like real life. What is this world? Because I was in for 9 years, so you're used to a certain kind of culture, and you go outside and it's not there no more. You're like, what? They even have a different language over there, like just different slang, and it's like, what am I supposed to be doing now? And figuring out that, it's like you go back to, I went back to the 18-year-old me of like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. So while I was a kid, I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. I get out of Navy, I go back to that feeling of I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, to then getting in an online community, going to events all over the United States, like for over 2 years, and then figuring out, I don't know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, but I know I'm supposed to be here with other people who are trying to figure it out. And that at that moment was like, check.
You know what? Let's talk more about that period, because I think it's actually really relatable.
Yeah.
And one of the things you said, which was really powerful, is because of your phone.
Yeah.
That feeling of like, I can just be myself.
Yeah.
Like that could be the business.
Yeah.
Like what I do professionally. You know what? You know the thing that I've seen, and I felt this firsthand, is I almost feel like when it comes to work, a lot of people feel like they have to like play a character.
Yes.
So it's like, I'm this way at home and with my friends and with my family.
Yeah.
And then when I go to work, it's the work version of Callum. It's like the mask comes on.
Yeah.
It's now I'm this person.
Yeah.
And one of the most beautiful things is, what if there was just a perfect alignment?
Mm-hmm.
What if there was no mask?
Right.
The way that I show up here is exactly the way that I show up here.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say 99% of people are not there.
No.
And it almost seems like a pipe dream. And so I'm curious to understand from your experience and your story, what was that process of going from, I've just left the Navy where there's this culture of structure and discipline, and it tells me exactly who I'm meant to be, to finding Eric Thomas and all of this and the power of social media? Okay, quick break. One of the things I hear time and time again is that people want to produce content, but they want to do it everywhere. They want to be on Instagram, LinkedIn, newsletter. The sponsor of today's show is going to help you achieve that, Cast Magic. Cast Magic is a software that helps you extract maximum value from your video or audio content. And here's how it works. So you upload an audio or video file into their software. It generates a transcript using AI, and it also generates a bunch of interesting and valuable assets based off of that transcript. So I'm talking things like summary of the content, newsletter posts, LinkedIn captions. They have this AI chat feature where you can ask it questions and prompts about the episode. So useful. It's been a complete game changer for us. And here's the great news. I've hooked you up. When you go to the link in the description, you will get your first month of Cast Magic completely free so that you can try it out and experiment with it. Without further ado, let's get back to the episode.
Getting out of the Navy, I had a bank job, right? And so I was behind the desk. It felt like 24/7, but for your 8 hours, I was behind the desk, right? I literally got sick, like sick, was in the hospital sick. And I couldn't really figure out why. I was like, yo, what's up with me? In between that time, that's when I found E, and the later version of me getting sick was that like turning point of, I need to get out of this 9 to 5. This just isn't me. And realizing that when I was with you know, E and the different events and things like that, I felt free, right? I felt and thinking back at it, it's like growing up with an overprotective family, then going into structure, you always feel limited. And then I went and I found E and I went to the different events and I felt like this weight off of me, right? And I didn't want to let that go. And when I realized when I went back to work, because in between, this is how I was able to go and volunteer for over 2 years because I still had that bank job, right? But going back, I would almost go into like a mini depression, right? Thinking about like, okay, I got to go back to the 9 to 5, and when's the next event and things like that. And you know, even when I was in the Navy, I had suffered through depression, so I'm very aware of when that happens. So in that moment of one place I felt free, the next place I felt limited again. I felt there was a turning point where I had to let that go. But I'm hard-headed, right? So something dramatic has to happen for me to let it go. And that was me going into the hospital and being like, no, you're sick. Like, you know what this is. You know that feeling. And you're intentionally going back because of safety and security and benefits and things like that. What's more important? And in my head, I was like, I get it. But God was like, oh, no, I'm going to make you, health is way more important. So I'm going to need you to fix this right now or you're going to stay right here. Right. And so I had put my 2 weeks in, and it's crazy because the second that I did that, when I was done completely, I was better. I went back to the hospital, vital, all that great stuff. We're good. Right. And I'm like, okay, all right, I got it. Cool. But that did not come with, an easy road. Like, that was a $30K cut that I took, right, from my job, going into like just different client work and things like that with E. And then of course I was married at the time, and that transition of everything that was happening, it actually caused a divorce from going from stability to now entrepreneurship. It's like, yo, what's happening? And yet I still felt the freest. I still felt that this is the place where I can be, because the old place made me feel the restricted, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Because even though I may be good at something, I'm good at IT, I felt like I had to do that. And once you get to a certain point, like, it's not your happiness and the level of I want to do this is so much freeing. And I don't regret it at all, of any of the process that I've done, because it made me realize the importance of like true, how do I say this? Like true freedom. And even with like how social media is now, how the narrative of success is, where it's like you get time is freedom, but you have to make this amount of money to get all this time back and this, that, and the third. I'm looking at it now more of like, no, there's a different definition of freedom. And that's just walking into the room and not having to act, not having to read it real quick and then be a certain kind of way. It's like you walk and you are just you, right? And that's a different feeling I never really really broke down to like understand. The process of it is needed to get to that. And it's not money, it's not the connections and everything like that. It's just that, like, yo, what place takes the weight off of the limitations? So it was, yeah. I don't know if I answered the question, but that's what popped in my head.
No, that's really good. And it reminds me of this, there's this Jay-Z quote.
Yeah.
And he says, the thing that I'm most grateful for, not the money, not the success, it's that I walk into every room as Jay.
Yeah.
It's like, and if you even think about Jay-Z, you don't even really put a profession or like an occupation to his name. It's like, he's not a rapper, he's not a business person, he's like all of the above. It's like Jay-Z is almost its own profession.
Yeah.
He's just himself.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I think the feeling that you described is so relatable, which is you can just kind of tell sometimes when you're not in the right spot, when you're not doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's no logical reason in your life yet to make the switch. Like the money doesn't, like you can't really afford to do it.
Right.
Even like the people around you don't want you to do it.
Right.
Even yourself, you're like, what else am I going to do? But it's like you have to like hang on to this feeling.
Yeah.
This feeling of freedom. And the thing I'm curious to understand, you remember, like, how vividly do you remember being at that job, like being at the desk?
So I could remember it very vividly because I would get in, I would do this. Praise God for the Navy because I'm able to knock things out in a very quick manner. So I'm able to knock out what I'm supposed to do majority of the day, probably in the first 2-3 hours, right, of just like pure focus, to then go on my lunch break, come back, have my laptop, and start creating different content for like E or something, or just something that I want to do and things like that. When they would, not force me, I don't want to say force, but when they would make me do other things, it would ruin my whole day. Like I have my thing. I do what you need me to do in the morning, and then in the afternoon, let me just create, and random calls that come up, I could do those, but like let me do what I do. And that would kind of be the routine. The job was probably about like, I'll say 30 minutes, 35 minutes away from the crib. On a good day, if there's traffic, it's traffic. Everybody was nice. It wasn't like I normally get along with everybody, so everybody was nice, but there was always this feeling of the top dogs, and I almost felt like I would never be able to pass the top dogs, and I don't like that feeling, right? I don't like being in a place where there's someone over me. And not necessarily, like, I respect boss and the structures and things like that, but just like that level of like, I will always know more than you. And it was never a good feeling because you could see people favored the person who was there the longest and pretty much ran everything and things like that. Where when growing up, I was treated as one, right? In the Navy, I would do everything that I could to be able to know everything so I could be respected as equal. I don't want to be less than. I want to be like we're all equals. And in that spot, I never felt equal. You felt the structure. You felt you were down here. And I was like, but I'm not, right? I'm extremely not there. And I think that also triggers certain things. But going in all the time, saying hi to everybody, cracking jokes here and there, but then just in this desk, right? Granted, they gave me a little window. Shout out to the window, right? But really just being just confined to that, where before I was going to like 20 different countries. You know what I mean? Like, I went to 20 different countries before I was like 25. Like, now I'm here. There's something really, really wrong. So, yeah, I remember it vividly. It just was not the greatest.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? It's like, and I even just thought of it as you're even describing, like, saying hi to everyone, cracking jokes, like just being in the routine of it. And it's like, everything is good, but it's not. And I think I felt this myself when I was working. I've also seen it in other people, which is like you continue doing the thing,
Mm-hmm.
even though in your mind you're like, this is not it.
Yeah.
And you can just, years can go by in your life of just like coasting
Mm-hmm.
in this position
Mm-hmm.
until something snaps you out of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. It's I think it's the conditioning of security and benefits and making sure that there's a paycheck that always comes in that makes you do these routine things that you don't necessarily want to do,
Mm.
right? Which is why it's so important for me now to do things not because I have to, because of, and I think this is just a growing, like, just life process. You're going to be doing things that you don't want to do, but you quote unquote have to do at the moment, whether it is for the paycheck, whether it is to keep a certain type of relationship, whatever it is, you're going to have to do it. But then there's a moment where you realize I don't have to do it anymore. When you realize, and this is why the internet is so dope, when you realize that you can make money without necessarily being in front of a desk, in front of a computer all the time, that's when for me it's like, I don't have to do this. Like this part of, and I remember when my mom was like, wait, you're quitting your job? So are you getting benefits? Are you, like, what's the pay structure and things like that? And she wasn't with it at all, right? She was like, how you go from not having to pay like for medical and dental at all to now going to the bank job and you still have your benefits and 401k, all that great stuff, to now nothing. No. My mom retired, everything like that. She did what we were supposed to do, right? I was the first one that went to college, like, online, because I'm an introvert. I'm not gonna go. Um, but online, got my degree and everything like that. She's like, "Yo, you're supposed to do that typical thing," and I was like, "No, I think this is gonna work." Now she's like the biggest fan. Now she's on my lives. Yeah, this AI tool isn't good. This the like she gets it. But it was hard in the beginning, and because you're so accustomed to a certain kind of way, especially, with different culture, different generations, where you're supposed to do the 9 to 5. You're not always supposed to like it. This is not something where it said you're supposed to always like your job. You're winning if you like your job, but that's 1% of the world who really, really like their job, according to what it was. Now we're in a generation where you get to choose what you want to do. And if you are in a place that you're not happy in, that is your choice now. That is not a have to. That is not a, this is what life is and suck it up, buttercup. It is, nah, you choose to be miserable. There's too many examples of where you don't have to be miserable. Go there. Feel how that is. It's going to feel a little bit uncomfortable, but do that for a bit. Tell me how that feels. I promise you, people are going to be like, I never want to do the other thing again. I promise you, I'm not doing a 9 to 5, never. But here, I have no problem with people who work a 9 to 5. I love people who work 9 to 5. I hate those entrepreneurs that like, get out of your 9 to 5. Why? No, please stay. Actually, you're hiring the people who do the 9 to 5. Don't tell them to go entrepreneurship. So even in those instances, for those people that are entrepreneurs that are like, yo, get off your 9 to 5. No, how do you make people feel comfortable and seen and in a way that you never did, so that they can work with you? That you could create an amazing environment of, because now that's my biggest thing is like the people that are around me, how do I make sure they never felt what I felt? They never felt not seen. They never felt that they weren't in place. They never felt sick to their stomach because they have to do certain things. It's like, how do you change what we've known from generation to generation of what a job is or what you're supposed to be doing to like, nah, I love it here. This is my thing.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? I remember a few months ago, we do an episode with this CEO coach.
Mm-hmm.
Coaches a lot of successful 7, 8 figure entrepreneurs, and he's talking about his experience coaching these individuals who are extreme high achievers,
Yeah.
right? And usually have been like that for a lot of their life. And he says, the one thing I realized, and he learned it from his mom, he says, the majority of problems that we have in the world, or like people feeling discontent or conflict, is purely driven by the fact that people don't feel seen. They don't feel like understood. And the second someone feels understood, it like turns the notch down a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and everything kind of works.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? I wanna talk about kind of how you made the transition into social media.
Yeah.
Because you're lying on the hospital bed and you're sick.
Yeah.
And even just to, like, in your life at the time, it's like the people around you, your mom, or even the divorce. It's kind of like, these could all be seen as obstacles or signs of like, don't leave the job.
Right. Absolutely.
And so how does Nicky at that time leave that job and start working for Eric Thomas, where you're growing his following and managing his social media?
Yeah. So before, like I said, before the hospital bed, I was always going to his events, right? It started like he had a Black Friday deal. I joined the online community. I was super active. And then whenever he would go to do his tour, I would go, right? I would volunteer. I would do whatever I can. Shout out that it was always in the weekend, so I could just hop on a plane or drive. 9 out of 10 times I'm probably driving. Shout out to my Honda that has so many miles on it. But I'm on it, cool, right? Then I get in the hospital. I make that transition of like, okay, we got to make a decision. And I start at one of the events, they were like, yo, you want to take over the social media? So I was like, and I was already doing kind of like little loose end jobs, like, okay, create this promo, do this, do that. Like, I was just trying to figure, I treated it like the Navy, meaning when I got in the Navy, I came in undesignated, which anybody who doesn't know what that means, you don't have no job, right? So I'm already I go to these events, I don't have no job. I'm just going to see where I kind of fit in. And then when the whole content thing started to really work out, they're like, you want to take over the social media? I said, sure. And I started growing that. While I was growing that, people were like, yo, how did you do that? Like, how did you create this? How did this grow from 300 to 500? How did it grow from 500 to 1 million? People started asking me more and more questions. And I was the behind the scenes, like, I had no desire to really do social media. I think I started like everybody else, like, we'll just put pictures of where we are, who we chilling with, this, that, and the third. And when I realized that people started asking me questions, I was just like, you know what? Let me just go live. Live is the only thing that I felt that I can do on a consistent basis because it required no editing, right? Just turn it on, talk to the people, keep it moving. So I did that. And I made a commitment of like between Monday through Fridays on Instagram, I would go live every single day. It was like around, it would vary. It'd be like from 8 p.m. to like 9 p.m. Around those times I would go. And more and more people started to like show up. And I still, it still allowed me to do what I needed to do from an ETA standpoint and make sure all the things were taken care of. But then I can concentrate on my brand at the end, like just talk to the people. It wasn't until probably the pandemic where everything started to like really blow up because they were like, that girl that always talks about content and social media, where is she? Because I have nothing else to do and watch while I'm on lockdown and I need to grow my brand. Here we go. And so like things started to blow up then, but it really just took people asking me, yo, how do you do this, for me to feel comfortable getting on social media. And like anybody else, you start looking at, okay, who else is doing what you're doing? and you're trying to find, once again, and now I'm back into this whole identity crisis thing, trying to figure out my vibe with it, because social media is like, it can be very, it is very overwhelming if you don't come in, once again, knowing who you are, right? And so I knew what I wanted to talk about, but I didn't know what was working. And when I stopped caring about what was working and just, Nicky, just show up, it started working, right? Because now people are like, okay, let me take this tip. This works. Let me try this. Let me do this. Cool. Great. And that's how kind of it is started, with just like, let me just talk to the people. Let me figure out how to, I just show up as me, and not necessarily care about the following, because that'll come. It's more of the intentions of, how do I feel comfortable as me, and what can I commit to on a regular basis that will allow me to still show up as me. So now I almost feel as if I have two lives. I have the ETA life of making sure he's good and grows, and what I've learned from that, then I take into my own stuff, and I just show up as me, and I grow as well. So it was a process, but it was really dope.
Yeah. I'm curious to get your perspective on this, and I think I know the answer. But was it more difficult to grow ET's following, or was it more difficult when you were starting out trying to think through how to do your own content?
I think it was difficult for me on my own stuff, because you're already given a brand with E who knows who he is, right? I'm figuring out where is my lay of the land on social media, right? He was already, you're on Instagram, you're on Facebook, you're on YouTube. These are my lays of the land. We just got to figure out what works. And what I always say that has worked with E is that I moved as a fan, not as an employee, not as a contractor, not as a, somebody who's trying to get a check. I moved as a fan. And so I created stuff that I knew the fans wanted to see. When it comes to my brand, I wasn't a fan of me at first. I didn't know who I was on social media at first. So it's hard to grow something with the excitement of, like I said, I would do something, I would post it, and I'll run away. Now I watch my stuff 24/7. I'm like, yo, this is fire. Like, I'll watch my stories over and over again, because now it got to a point where now I'm a fan of it. Now I could create something, and I'm like, okay, this is gonna rock to somebody. And with E, it was more of, I know there is somebody, and I would create when I see something like, yo, I'm struggling with this, I'm struggling with that, boom, boom, I would create based off what the comments were saying, right? Really great feedback. For me, I didn't have that necessarily feedback just yet. So it was, I'm going to create, and then when I see something, one person, I'm just going to pour into that one person. And I've maneuvered in that kind of way of like create for one, because when in the beginning trying to figure it out of like, okay, do I create for the masses? Like you're trying to grow a following, this, that. It's like you miss it. You never create for the masses. You can't possibly know everybody's problem. Like there's no way I can possibly know what everybody does, what everybody has a trouble going to sleep with, their pain point. I can't possibly know that. So I started just like, okay, I'm just going to create for one person, right? And when I started doing that, then it started to work a lot easier, because I'm saying only trigger words that is relying to, like, that one person can relate to. That one person is then going to tell another person. Like my lives used to have like 4 people on it, right? And then 5 people will come on, 6 people will come on, 7 people will come on, because I'm just catering to those 4 people that were on there at first. And so it made it easier when I started doing that, and then I became a fan of it, and then I was like, okay, I'm good. Earlier on, it was just like I could do ease all day, and this one, Okay, we'll figure it out when we figure it out. But it was the commitment of, at least at night, I'm gonna work on my brand.
You know what? I thought you were going to say that because I think it's always easier to create for someone else.
Yeah.
And even people that aren't like social media managers or not managing like a huge talent social media platform, it's like you might even take your friend's phone and post on them for like their IG story. It's so easy to hit the little story thing and publish it. But now all of a sudden when it's you, it's like, oh, what are people gonna think?
Because you don't see how dope you are.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And I'm always told that, like, I don't, because I create for one, I don't really know the impact that I'm making. Right. And so I don't, even though I live in confidence now, I'm a very low key person. And I don't see what everybody else sees. I don't see like, yo, when you said this, when you did this changed. Like, I don't see none of that. And that's why it's easier to create for somebody, because we see all of that. Like, I see how dope your podcast is in a viewpoint that you possibly don't necessarily see it, right? You may see things within my content and how my brand is that I would be like, really? I had no clue, right? Some of the things you said, I have no clue. Great. Because that's just how I am. And I've realized that with creators, it's just more of like I wouldn't say necessarily doubt ourselves. We just don't see the dopeness. Regardless of what our accolades has been, what is like, how do we walk in a room, things like that. I'm always going to be like super shocked when somebody says I'm always like, I'm amazed that people follow me. Like, I'll go, like, because I live in Virginia, so when somebody recognizes me over there, like, no, I feel like nobody lives in Virginia, first off, okay? And somebody's like, yo, I love your stuff. How do you know? First off, how do you know? It was the weirdest thing when somebody, that I was walking, I do my walks, I do like 3-4 miles every single day, right? Just keep clarity in my head. And somebody stopped. I love your content. Sir, please keep driving. This is weird, but it's going back to what you were saying. We see the greatness in other people, and it's hard for us to see the full greatness. Like, we know that, okay, we're dope, but we don't see the full greatness, so we can't necessarily create or move in that kind of way fully, because there's still some things that we're just like, nah, that it's not there yet. And maybe it's a matter of like, I'm always striving for something more, and not necessarily looking back and being like, yo, you've done a lot, you know that? And I had that kind of realization probably about like maybe like 6 months ago, where I realized that my head was always down, and I looked up and I'm like, yeah, you kind of done a lot. Even this year, I'm looking up and I'm like, you kind of done a lot, and we don't do that often. It's just like go, and being a New Yorker is like, I'm not done. Like, I'm always on to the next one. I'm always on to the next one. And it's you have to look up and take a breath and be like, no, you kind of done a lot, and you're kind of dope. But then it also goes to the environment of who's around you. As an introvert, I don't necessarily always have that many people that is saying, yo, look at this, look at that. I'm like, really, like, I be in my house. I be with my dog. I could turn on my phone. I go live at any moment, but then I turn it off. And so it's a different world and this is why community is so important to me, because if I didn't necessarily have a community, I probably wouldn't really understand the impact that I have, and would probably still create way better for other people than myself.
I think to your point, it's so good, which is we see all of our deficiencies. And I think in the beginning phase, kind of like that 0 to 1, and I'm even thinking of a page, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, where it's like, maybe you have one post from like 2021 or something. And I think the difficulty in the beginning stage is, I feel like naturally as humans, when we put something out, we see everything that's wrong with it. It could be the best video with a great story, but the jacket I was wearing like doesn't look
Trash.
good.
Yes.
Yeah, like,
Yes.
and why did I stumble over my words like in the opening?
Yeah.
And so I think the reason it's so difficult in the beginning is that you don't have the validation and the reassurance of a ton of followers and views and metrics to be like, yeah, even though your jacket's kind of messed up, 500,000 people watch, so it's cool.
Yeah.
And so can you give some advice to people on like, how do you push through that initial stage? Because it's a journey to kind of finding who you are in social media. So how do you push through that initial stage where it's like, you're not getting the validation from a large audience that what you're doing is correct, but then you're also fighting the internal battle of like, no one cares what you have to say. Your lighting's trash. Your camera's not good enough. You don't know how to tell a story. Who are you? What does your opinion matter for?
Yeah.
Like all of these internal thoughts that are just telling you like, stop posting. Like, don't post.
Yeah. For me, it was an online community, right? So like I started in an online community with Eric Thomas, and the people in there were all trying to figure it out. So no one necessarily had a big following and was like, okay, I know the importance of social media. We gotta do this, right? So it was like connecting with those people who are also trying to do it. Whether it was, for me, majority of my friends or the people I've connected with, I've never met in my life. Like they're all in different states and that whole nine. And I stopped searching for it to be so local, and I accepted it from being wherever I can get it from, and leaning on people of like, yo, did you post today? Did you do this? Did we do this? Like, it's the people, if finding just like-minded people is so, it sounds so cliche nowadays because of marketing and how they've used it, be around like-minded, but it literally is, you need to do that, because if not, you're going to allow your mind to take over. You're going to allow, we're creatures of habit, right? So going into school, we were giving a grade to say, hey, this works. You're doing good. When you get on social media, there is a grade, quote unquote, the views and the likes and everything like that. In the beginning, you're going to do trash. You're always going to do trash. It is the people who are around you that's saying, yo, you did 1 view, but you did 5 on this one. It's working, right? Let's look at the positive of things. And it's so hard with the culture that we have, as far as the negative always gets highlighted, right? Or even in our minds of comparison, we are our worst critics and our worst enemy, because we say what is success. There's nothing, especially from a social media standpoint, there's nothing there that is written anywhere that's saying this is what social media success is supposed to look like. This is how many followers you're supposed to get, so many views, comments. There's nothing there. We just get on it. We look and admire people or brands or whatever, and then we go, I have like 100 followers and you have like 100,000. I will never. I'm not that. So, but you're looking at a person's 7 years to your day one. So it's important to find those other people who are day ones, or maybe day 15s or 3 months in, to be like, to help you, because those people are out of reach. Those people won't talk to you about this is what you're doing right and wrong. It's the people who are figuring it out as well that are like, oh, okay, so posting 7 times, I don't need to do that? Okay, that's fine. I won't do it anymore. Great. Okay, this wasn't that bad. Mr. Beast, and I love Mr. Beast for the simple fact of, he said, your first 100 videos are going to suck, right? And it's not about the how many videos that you put out or how many times you show up on something. It's about what are you doing to get like 1% better. And it's not that the people are saying you suck. You say you suck, right? And so how do you make sure you stop saying that you suck? What does it have to look like for you? So we were talking earlier, it was like the importance of lighting, right? Sometimes it's not a matter of how do you make the video per se of what you're recording good. It's how do you make it look better. So how do you put extra lighting? How do you improve your mic? How do you better speak on certain things? How are you getting 1% better? And that's more of a challenge for yourself than necessarily anybody going, your content's trash. I swear, people swear, like we go and be like, oh my God, this is trash. Do you see this? This is trash. Everybody, this is trash. No one does that. Yeah. It's like we just keep scrolling. But we think, oh no, they're saying something about me. I should delete it. I should do this. No, just post something tomorrow that's a little bit better because we forgot what you posted already. That simple.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's called what you just described. It's called the spotlight effect, which is basically like we imagine that there's like a spotlight on our lives.
Yeah.
We think everything that we do is way more important than it is. You see this like even in public, like everyone's so cognizant of how is everyone else walking and like moving, and you don't want to do anything that's out of place because you don't want to stand out.
Yeah.
And like in reality, even if you did something that stood out, people would pay attention for like 1 second and then move on. Like no one cares.
Right.
But I think to your point, like especially on social media, it's like we feel it. We feel like that everyone remembers the story that I posted yesterday. And it's like, no, your 100 followers actually don't.
No, none of them.
They don't.
And 10% of them only saw it too, the way the algorithm hits them. No.
Yeah. You know what? I like this because we're starting to get into the steps of like how people can start to build that following that's impactful for them. And so I almost see the step one is like, you have to start putting something out there. Like that's the biggest hurdle in the beginning. I think step two, which you made, is like really good, which is building that community around yourself. So even though you don't necessarily have a ton of viewers or an audience giving you feedback, you have this like tight community of people who are at a similar stage to you that can give you feedback. I want to know, because I feel like in the beginning stage, it's almost you're experimenting, right?
Yes.
Like even if we took Instagram as an example, maybe you're doing almost like carousel posts. You're posting on the IG story. Then every now and then you do like a reel, and then you do a live. It's like, how does someone get to the point where they're like, this is actually the way that I'm meant to communicate? For you, it felt like it was live was the right thing.
Yeah.
What are the steps that someone gets to where they're like, this is the way that I'm meant to post, and they can start to focus on that?
So I don't want to fight what comes natural to me, right? So meaning I have this like little exercise where I go, okay, at 3:47 in the morning, if someone wakes you up, you cold in your eye, like, and I say, yo, video, audio, image or written, what are you creating? Like super random, somebody wakes you up, right? That's whatever your answer is, that's what you create every single day. Not necessarily from a standpoint of, is this going to work or anything? The first thing you have to do is be consistent. And so when you are figuring out what comes natural to you, some is going to be video. Some people have no business being in front of video, right? In the beginning, not saying that they can't ever. And so and even now, like I'm following a lot of people that are written first, then going into video. And some people are video first and going into written. I'm noticing now that you start with your natural, you get better with that, and then you expand your audience, because we start as a, some people are introverts, they may start as a written situation. And then as their brand grows, then they'll feel comfortable with the video side. But that may not be so consistent because that's not their natural. So they may do that once a week, break that down into several clips from vertical and all that other stuff that'll work on platforms, but their written is on a regular type basis. Those people who are extroverts, they may be very cool with being in front of the video and camera and things like that, right? They may be able to do that a little bit more, hence why we'll see vlogs, hence why we'll see behind the scenes situations a little bit, right? And then they'll expand to other things. It goes always to, how do I feel comfortable being in my natural self? How do I get that 1% better each time? And where am I getting my inspirations from in order to expand on that 1%? It's never about copying. I love what Swiss Beats did, right? Swiss Beats, the hip hop producer. He goes, when I was first figuring out how to be a producer, I copied everybody, right? I had to get the foundation right. So I looked at all these other producers, and I would get their sound right, and then I would add just one thing. I would add another thing. And then that's where my sound came from, by having the foundation of these greats, but adding my swag to it. So once you understand what your natural is, it is okay to look at other people and build that foundation. Like, they do captions. Let me get captions on it. They have a lighting at a certain kind of angle. Let me get the lighting. Let me get this particular mic and things like that, because it's not necessarily the equipment or anything that makes you look the same. Is what you like. It's what you're saying and what you're doing inside of this content that makes you actually stand out, right? And so when we build that foundation of, here are my top 5 people that I see that I admire on social media, and I always go like probably like two or three that's inside of your niche. But then what is that, like 1 or 2 people that are outside, right? Because the outside is what's going to make you stand out. So I would, let's say, follow sports and what they're doing with content, and possibly bring it into talking about AI or social media, because people like what they're doing over there, but it's never seen in your own niche. So I can stand out in that kind of sense. A really good book that I read is like Still Like an Artist. Such a good book, because it takes away the pressure of like forever innovating. Like, they said something in that book that is like, an idea, there's no original ideas, you just don't know the source of it, right? And so even like where we are right now, this looks fire, but there was inspiration taken from other places that they put their own swag to it, that you don't even know who the original artist, you just think it's them, right? So the importance of getting those online mentors, breaking down why you like them and everything like that, build that foundation, and then move off of your natural is so crucial in the beginning part.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I like what you said about start with your natural.
Yeah.
And the reason I like it is people even ask me about podcasting. Like, I'm getting that more often now, like people that want to start podcasts.
I can imagine.
And I started to realize from my experiences, it's actually the wrong question. Like, people will be like, oh, should I do a podcast? Should I get into podcasting?
Right.
And it's like, I think it's almost as if people want the hack. So they want to know, like, should I be on, and you'll hear a conversation like this, like, oh, people are going viral on TikTok right now. People are going viral on LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever. There's like this new trend that's like, you can easily get the result you want if you just do this.
Yeah.
And it's like the wrong question, because if you don't like speaking to a camera or speaking into a microphone, but other people are going viral, that doesn't mean that you should do that thing. Like, you need to start with what is the natural way that you communicate, which is why I love that test of like, it's 3:47 a.m. Someone shakes you out of bed. Like, what is your first mode of communication?
Yeah.
Because that's what creates the longevity. That's what creates the consistency, which is where you get the success. Taking that on board, the question I know, and I can even like hear it, is you're communicating in your natural. So you're starting with your natural. You're getting 1% better each time.
Yeah.
Where are the followers? Where are the views? Where is the viral content? And here's even why I ask it. Content is very like feast or famine at some times.
Yes.
Like we felt this, like you kind of go from nothing to something.
Yes.
It's not like this steady, kind of when you're doing a job, I feel like it's more of like a steady trajectory.
Yeah.
Maybe you're getting like regular promotions or you're just gradually getting better at your job.
Yeah.
With content, it's like you had nothing and then all of a sudden it's a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And so that's the question that I almost hear once people kind of understand the start with the natural, which is like, okay, I'm communicating my natural self, I'm being my authentic self, but where are the views? Like, where's the audience, the engagement coming from?
Right. So the easiest, and what probably everybody hates to hear is the consistency, right? Where eventually that 1% is going to start working. And that's where the algorithm of any platform, it's like a relationship, right? We meet, we talk a little bit, but we may not talk for another couple of weeks or so, right? With social media, I treat it like a human, because the more that you show consistency, the more that it's going to be like, okay, I take you serious. When you first start, they're like, I don't take you serious. Like, I got a whole bunch of other people that's been on here for a few, that they're every single day. You're still trying to figure it out. You're every other day. You're once in a while. You're once a month. I'm not taking you serious, right? But then I go with this play system, like the platform and leverage, audience, and you. So meaning with the platform, if you see what they're putting energy towards, so if we're talking about Instagram with Reels, when that first started popping up, everybody who put energy towards Reels because they saw Instagram was putting energy towards Reels went, right? It's like, oh, you listen to me, right? That, once again, treating the platform like a human. Oh, you listen to me. You see what I put on today. I'm going to pay more attention to you, right? So looking at the platform, seeing and leveraging the features that it has, okay, that's what I'm going to be doing. Then once I start getting some people in, and following me and everything like that, now I got to see what the audience wants, right? So now I'm going to create based off, maybe what they like the most. Even if you have I only have 20 likes or 20 views, but my average is about 10. I'm going to see what the 20 is, and I'm going to just do that again because my audience likes that, right? And so now I'm catering to what the audience wants so they can stay with me. And plus, they're my marketing team without paying for them. So if I can continue to create for them, they're going to share my stuff. So the platform is going to love on me because I'm paying attention to what they're wearing. Like I said, the features that they have, and they're going to push me out to the masses. My audience is going to push me out to their audience because they rock with me. But then I'm also going to be, the why part is you. I'm also going to be creating for me because I cannot necessarily only serve the platform and the audience and not serve myself. I still need to show a bit of me, or I need to experiment in some way, shape, or form, right? So this is kind of like the cycle that I go through when I'm like, okay, now I gotta grow. I figured out my natural, but now I gotta grow. I gotta play with the platform. Literally, I gotta figure out what platform that I want to be on. I got to leverage the features. I got to rock with my audience, and then I got to create for myself. And once I figured that kind of out, then the numbers started to come in, because it's just a cycle now. I'm doing maybe some of the trends, and the trends doesn't mean I'm out here dancing. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean I'm out here doing skits and everything like that. It means I'm paying attention what the culture wants, right? What people are talking about. And I'm putting my own spin to it in my own niche, right? So a great example I used was when they had this this clip of Hulk grabbing a villain and smashing him back and forth, right?
Yeah, from Avengers.
Yeah. So I said that was Instagram, and the villain was my content, right? Going back and forth, boom, boom, boom. Everybody related. They're like, yo, that's so true. But that hits kind of a trending situation. If that clip is going crazy, but I change it into my niche, the platform is saying, hey, you pay attention to trends. Hey, you use trending audios and things like that. I'm a push you out more, right? And then then I have that, and then I'm looking at my insights, and I'm looking at what my audience wants. And it's just like a cycle of that standpoint, and I don't get too caught up necessarily with the numbers, but I do understand that is what shows me that I'm on the right track.
I like it. And it makes sense why earlier you referred to it as like the start with the natural is the foundation.
Yeah.
Because you have to figure out, what do you like to create? What's the way that you uniquely communicate and enjoy communicating?
Yeah.
And if you can get that foundation right, it means that you'll be consistent.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, the audience will be like, okay, this person is for real. They're not the person that posted on Monday, disappeared for 2 months, came back again and like wants me to take them seriously.
Yeah.
They're the person that posts day in, day out, the time that they told us they were going to post, they're for real.
Yeah.
And then it's like you layer on these understandings, insights of the platform, which also makes sense why you're saying like you have creators in your niche that you follow, and then you have some outside creators that you follow. So you have this awareness of what's working on the platform right now. And once you layer all of this, it's like you're building, it's like cascading, like it's building things on top of each other. You're starting to really get the momentum. You know what? Let's say that following that process, and I'll just pick an arbitrary number. Let's say it gets me to 10,000 followers. At what point, what does it take for me to go from the 10,000 to like 100,000? Like when we're really getting up there in the numbers, and it's like, this is actually a brand. Like this is a force now.
I think collaborations don't get talked about enough, because that's exactly what helped me get from like that 10K to 100K, right? Because you could do everything inside of the platform, and that's not to say that you won't reach those numbers. But the power of collaboration, that it's almost like a digital cosign of, oh snap, this person's serious, and we don't know who's in their audience that is like, oh, well then let me work with them too, and then let me work with them too. It takes you to whole new heights where when you jump on other people's podcasts, when you jump on people's lives, when you do different types of content with them, that expands you to audiences that expands over the 100K, right? And what I also want to emphasize is that even though we do strive for these numbers, we look at what's so crazy about like even my journey is that when I was having like the low, not necessarily low numbers, but as I was growing, the amount of people that was following wasn't the big deal. It was the quality of people that were following me. Like the amount of, now you could buy verified, but the amount of verified people that were following me, I was like, I don't need 100K at this moment. I got so-and-so doing this. I got these people, like people I looked up to following. And even when some people that weren't following, they were in my DMs, like, I watch your stuff all the time. Right? And I'm like, no, but you were in the movies, sir. Like, you have no business following my stuff. You just produced this amazing situation. Like, what are you talking about, right? But that's also with the power of collaboration, because I was starting to jump on other people's podcasts and do different people's lives and everything like that. Because as an introvert, I'm really to myself, right? I just want to talk to y'all. That's it. That's all I want to do. But when I started working with other people, then to get to that point, the quality of followers came through, And it was like, so dope. That means so much more than anything. And though we look at numbers, I always say, we look at your following, you probably have 2 to 3x more followers than you know, because of the people who are watching you who don't hit that follow, but they're watching you, right? But when we get back to the conversation of like to that 100K, between collaborations, between now getting into, let's say, more of you have to do more of the platform work at that moment to grow, because you're now saying, hey, platform, show me to more people, right? Show me to more people. You're going to have to do the up it a little bit more. Meaning, so if you were playing the platform game just once a week, you may have to do it twice. So this is why when we're like YouTube, with YouTube Shorts, some people are like, yo, I want more subscribers. Then you have to go and put out more shorts, right? Because that's where the energy is at this moment. And they bring in a whole new crowd of people. You're going to have to go from maybe once a week of doing shorts to maybe 4 or 5 times a week. Instagram, you may have to do 4 or 5 times more of the reels that you were doing, right? It's upping everything that you did. It's not staying at that once a week, that twice a week situation. It's always about, how do I increase it a little bit more to up my chances a little bit, right? So I would say between those two, upping your platform game and collaborations.
Yeah. Okay, no, that's good stuff. You know what? There's all like these gurus on social media, right? And you see, or even like celebrities who have these huge followings. And these are when you talk about even like Steal Like an Artist, or these people that you look up to and you're like, oh, I'd love to have my page looking like this and this many followers and all this stuff. You'll look at celebrities, you'll look at these gurus, you'll look at like Alex Hormozy, what he's been able to do, or Gary Vaynerchuk, or a favorite celebrity. And not only are they dominating on, let's say, Instagram, they're also on LinkedIn.
Yes.
They're also got a YouTube channel that's popping. They've got the TikTok is going off like it's
crazy.
Clear.
Yes.
Maybe even there's like some new social media platform that they're experimenting with and starting to dominate.
Yeah.
And even like when Threads came out, I'm like seeing these guys, they're now on Threads too. Like, what is kind of your perspective? Because I think it's just overwhelming for people.
It is.
And it's like this feeling of, okay, in order to build this brand and community and really be showing up for people, do I need to be on every single one of these platforms? What is kind of your perspective of, first of all, do you need to be on all of them? And even when maybe things are starting to work on one platform, when is the right time to be like, okay, I'm dominating Instagram, I'm now going to do YouTube or something else? So
shout out to all those people that are saying to be omnipresent, right? And create all these different things. I was watching Dave Ramsey, and though I may not agree with his financial information or anything, the one thing that he said was like, yo, I'm a content creator. Like, I'm on everything, right? But we have to break down those people who say be on everything, who's backing them. So when you look at a Gary V, he has like 10, 15 people on his team. Alex Hormozy spends 10 to 15K a month. Probably more now.
I think way more.
Yeah,
actually.
Probably more now.
Like a week.
Yeah. To be able to do this, right? We look at those people who are everywhere, and you have to realize they have teams. If you are just starting out, you are probably a team of one or a VA, right? You concentrate on one. Because to be honest with you, the influencers that come from social media, we're not going, oh, that's so-and-so from social media. We're going, that's so-and-so from TikTok. That's Kabi from TikTok. That's Mr. Beast from YouTube, right? Now, do we see them everywhere? Yes. But do we associate them with where they started and what they dominated? Yeah. So start with one and understand that flow and how to be authentic over there, because that's going to show up. And then as you have a team, be omnipresent on other things, or use scheduling apps like Later. Later is a good one. Business Suite, if you want to stay within, Instagram and Facebook at the same time. Later is for those people who want to be omnipresent on others, where once you have a good understanding of what platform and you've concentrated on growing on that, then yeah, you could repurpose on the other ones just to start off with making sure you have a presence on the other ones. And then as you have a team, have a dedicated person or a person that concentrates on one or two other platforms. But that's the progression of growing your brand. That's not and there's some people that are like, I can do two. Okay. That's not meaning do Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Threads, TikTok. You're going to mess up in something. It's not going to grow as quickly as the one that you're concentrating on. Like, even if you're repurposing the content. So let's say you start off on TikTok. You're killing it on TikTok. You're creating exactly what the platform wants, right? You're doing the green screens, you're doing all these things. And then you put it on Instagram, it doesn't hit the same way. You're like, what? Because you're talking to that platform and you're treating the other one like a side piece, right? And so it's not going to grow. Will some hit? Yeah, of course. But you look at where you feel natural at. You create on that platform, and as your brand grows, you feel that this place is a little bit like I could do this with my eyes closed at a certain point. Then you can test out the other ones. Then you can get a team and be omnipresent on all these other platforms. But to sit here and say, hey, I'm starting and I'm over here. No, like for me, I'm YouTube, Instagram, Threads. That's my thing. That's it. Everything else I'm semi omnipresent on, right? But not from a standpoint of I'm growing them. It's if there needs to be a shift, I'm going to shift over there, right? But Instagram has been my main boo until this year because Instagram is acting special. YouTube is now my main boo, right? Because I feel from a creator standpoint, longevity wise, YouTube is where it's at. Threads is my written situation because I just feel like X is a little bit too toxic for me. So that's where I'm going. And then as my team grows, then I will concentrate on the other ones. But for right now, that's what I can handle. That's what people are knowing me for, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. It's interesting to even deconstruct the feeling of like wanting to be on every platform. And even when I reflect on my journey with this podcast, I remember maybe like a year ago, I literally was on everything. Like we would post on TikTok, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and then all of the podcasting stuff. And it's funny, like so maybe like 1 to 2 months before we really started to blow up was when I made the conscious decision of like, this is a YouTube show. We do YouTube now.
Right.
Like and we were always doing YouTube. And I, even with your thing of like, start with the natural.
Yeah.
YouTube is where me as the person spends the most time.
Yes.
Like when I'm not working, I'm just like chilling at home or I'm on my laptop. YouTube is the first page that I'm opening.
Facts.
And so it's funny because and it felt like I was putting way more effort in even a year ago because I'm like, okay, we need to do the TikTok thing. But it's just like busy work. It's just posting the same clip on like 6 different things and there's no result. When we really just focused on YouTube and doing a debrief on the episode of like, okay, what worked? What didn't? How can we improve? Watching other videos of people literally breaking down how to succeed on YouTube. Like people are going to tell you exactly what it takes.
Yes.
That's when we really started to see the results. And then to your point now, it's like the next platform I'm looking at is Instagram. And it's the same approach of like, how do we make content native to Instagram that we think can do really well? But we're not doing Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. Like it's Instagram.
Yeah.
And YouTube.
Yeah. No, that's see, and that's what people. You said something right there that people are going to fly through is you're not looking at, okay, I did good on YouTube. Now I'm going to take the whole clips that I've done with YouTube and I'm going to put them on Instagram and now we're good. No, what worked on YouTube is you creating natively for YouTube. And YouTube is a beast in itself because that's understanding the thumbnails and the titles and that science and click-through rates. But you understood the science of the importance of consistency. You understood the science of the retention. You understood that to where now on Instagram, it may be a little bit different. Their attention span is a little bit shorter. So where before I was concentrating on the packaging, I'm now concentrating on those first 3 seconds, right? Okay, cool. But I understand certain science from social media as a whole. And so now I can create on Instagram a little bit more natively because I know what that worked on YouTube. People are going onto these different platforms not knowing what works, period. And so it makes it difficult. And I was on a panel where we were talking about the YouTube Shorts situation and how people just put it from Instagram and TikTok and it's like, it's not working. And it's like, but are you utilizing some of the features that are on the actual platform and creating for that platform? Sometimes it's not going to be the repurposed clips that we get from the podcast. Sometimes, oh man, I think I just saw, it was, what's his name? Steph Graham or something like that. He was saying that he'll take a clip from
Graham Stephan?
Yeah, that dude. Where he takes a clip from the podcast, but he'll create a hook, like a native hook, because the podcast will have conversations and there may be a really good part, but there won't be anything that leads up to that part that hooks people to show that this is important. So he'll make one specifically for a vertical video, right? Where then they could lead to the clip later on, but he wouldn't have known that if he just went through, let me just put the clips up like I normally do. He's like, no, if I'm creating for this particular platform, I got to hook them. I could do the longer clips on YouTube and things like that. And that's the importance of like, when we focus on one and we understand the science of it, we know that there's going to be some nuances on other platforms that won't catch us by surprise. We just have to master that as well, the same way that we did on the first one.
No, it's such a good point. The people that are like, the people that you see on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok, Twitter, whatever, that are elite to that platform, that like, you are literally going on the app because you want to see what they posted that day.
Yeah.
They're all doing that.
Yeah.
They're all creating natively for that platform. It's not just something that was on Twitter that they just threw up.
Yeah.
They're understanding the unique features of that platform and applying it. It's a really good point. Okay, here's where I want to go next.
What's that?
Because here's one of the things that I've seen is there's a lot of people that have followers, maybe they even get views, but they're not making any money from it.
Right.
And so even in the conversation, because when we talk about leaving your job and being able to build a life, being yourself, a very important part of that is not just the audience, but it's also like, okay, how am I making money from this? How do I make an income, a living from this?
Yeah.
And so to begin, at what point, like, is the monetization piece something I should even be focusing on in the beginning? At what point does like, how do I make money from this? What point does that even enter my psyche, enter my mind?
So, to be honest, I think that is something that you should be doing from the beginning. Not necessarily, let's say, leading only with money, right? Because what people tend to do is the extremists. It's like, I'm only here for the followers and the fame. And I think eventually that leads to money. So there's not really a structure or a strategy to get to the money. And then they realize there's like millions of followers and I didn't make nothing, right? Or you lead with money and you actually have a complete disconnect with followers and you look like you're only here for you, right? There's two extremists. I think there has to be a meeting of the middle where I'm trying to grow a brand. Well, I'm growing a brand, but I have to be thinking that money has to come in somehow, some way. Now, am I going to think that I'm going to be making millions off top? Absolutely not. But I will be happy that if I post something and I get a few coins from it, something's working, right? And we have to also understand that, especially when it comes to followers, there are people who are going to be ready to swipe their card out the gate because you said something that was a trigger word that they've been searching for on the whole web. And they're like, yo, I love who you are, what you represent, and you have the solution. Here you go. Please just take my money. And then there's some people that are going to be like, yo, I met you, but we have to go on a couple of more dates. You know what I mean? Like I have to get to know you a little bit more, and then I'll pay for it, right? And so if we understand that cycle, we have to understand that we should always have monetization up at any point, because I don't know if you're going to like me on the first day or the 102nd day. So whether it is from a standpoint of affiliate marketing, whether it is a standpoint of a private community, whether it's a standpoint of merch, I think it goes more of whatever feels comfortable to you. I will always suggest affiliate marketing first and foremost. Why? Because that's not necessarily, especially for those people who may be like self-conscious of like, I don't want to seem like that marketer. I don't want to seem like, yo, buy me, buy this, right? But I can have a hat, let's say, and I worked with, like, I got the affiliate link for this hat, and I'm just doing my content. And some people are like, yo, I love the hat. Bet, just go to the link in the bio. It's there, right? Because of who I am, people may really rock with it. I love those Amazon finds. Like if you go and you bought a whole bunch of things on Amazon, you show what it is. Some people were like, yo, let me get that link. Got you on my Amazon store. And you get a percentage of what people are buying. So you're not going, here, buy it. It's like you get a percentage of everything that goes on. Of course, with like merch, eventually people are going to want to rock with you, right? You wear something that you could have that store up. You could use Printful off top. Just give them the design. You don't have to hold no inventory. You don't have to do anything. It's up. People buy it. There you go, right? Then you have like crowd support. Like for instance, when you go on Instagram, you got badges and gifts. You got super chat and super thanks on YouTube. These are things that if the person really rocks with you, that's like tipping the creator, right? These are all little small things. I'm not saying here go, okay, get the brand deals off top, which you can with like 1,000 followers because you have 1,000 dedicated followers based off your niche. But the small things that you can do to at least get some coins up, just to see like, is people like, they really rocking with you? I think that's very possible in like follower 100.
You know what? So I think what you're saying makes so much sense. And I was just thinking, what stops people from doing that? And the thing that came into my mind is something you mentioned, actually, the fear of the ask. I remember I even have this as a creator. When you first start, I don't know, maybe it's like a brand sponsorship or whatever. It's like you built this following and got this traction from just showing up on camera or whatever it is, being yourself.
Yeah.
And you got to a point of being good enough at doing the thing that people gave a shit and they started tuning in.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, now I'm like gonna try and sell them something. Even if you feel like it's good, it feels, there's like this feeling as a creator that it just makes you uncomfortable.
Yes.
And so how does one start to reconcile that? Is it like purely a mental thing? Like what has helped you, I guess, because you're someone who's very authentic, you're very yourself. And I think sometimes when you're like that, it can be difficult to be like, yeah, and buy the hat. And it's like over here.
So it's selling things that you feel comfortable with, the first and foremost, right? I noticed in my journey that I wasn't necessarily comfortable selling courses. That's not my thing, right? Like that wasn't ever like, I got this course. I switched it to I have this community because if it's what you value. I value community huge. So I want you a part of the community. But the way that I want you part of the community, I got to lead with serving first. So I need to give you value. And if you get any type of value from it and you want to continue in this journey, here, I got a community. You know, if like for instance, I got, because I wear hats all the time, I'm going to have a hat that has a lion on it because that's my thing, lion's behavior. I'm going to give a meaning to the hat. And it's not that you buy the hat. You are a part of a community, right? And the hat represents that you are part of that and that you represent this particular movement. It's never, I never look at, and some people can move with the, I have a goal with the money and I'm going to sell however you want to go about it. I've done it all. I've done the cohorts, the masterminds, the this and that, the webinars. I've done them all, right? I've now gotten to a point where, once again, I don't have to. I feel comfortable and I go based off my values. I sell what is valuable to me because I know I would buy it, right? And in the beginning of your creator journey, you're going to like, okay, let me do the merch, let me do this, let me do that, and you have to. So I'm never going to say don't do that because you're going to have to figure out what works for you. For me, it's going to be the small masterminds because I'm an introvert. So we're going to do the small one. Big events, I don't know yet. We'll work on that. I don't know, right? But the small events, I can do that, right? But I do that even on a like a more private scale, meaning that's inside of the community. So I'll get you inside of the community, but then I'll tell you about the bigger price point stuff inside of the community. I'm not going to be on social media like, hey, I got this $10,000, $20,000 program. I can't do it. It's not me. So you have to figure out what you feel comfortable. It always goes back to that. What feels natural to you on what you can sell. And it's normally what are the things that you would buy and what are the things that you find valuable, right? If you are super proud of your fit, you're going to be like, I bought this over here. You could buy it over here, right? Because this is what you're proud of. This is what you think. But we get in that whole rabbit hole of, I need to make, if these are the creators and this is what they've done, right? I have to do the same thing and I have to sell it the same way that I have no business going to sell chocolate like Mr. Beast. But what we can learn from how Mr. Beast sells is that he product places in his own videos. He integrates it with everything that he does. So when we get to the point of selling, how can we integrate it with all the stuff that we were already doing anyways? We don't have to necessarily, hey, this is a mic, this is a short mic, and this is what it all does. That's an infomercial. That's not what we do. You have to figure out how to integrate it with everything that you've done. And so that's where creators kind of get caught up in because they think they have to do something extra to sell. And people are already following you for what you do. So just integrate it in what you do and it sells on its own.
You know, one of the lessons I'm getting just from listening to you is, and it was exactly the same on the content side as it is on with the monetization piece, which is there's this process where you start looking inwards.
Yeah.
You start inwards.
Yeah.
And I think most people do the opposite, right? So like, I even wrote down in my notes 6 ways that creators can monetize, and I'll go through them. So you have the online course, which you mentioned. You have the online membership, which I guess is like a community. You have affiliate marketing. You have a done-for-you agency like service offer. You have consulting, either in a group setting or like one-to-one coaching consulting. And then 6, you have a digital product. And most people will be like, okay, which one is this creator doing? Which one makes the most money? It's like this outward looking journey. And it's the same with the content creation piece. When I mentioned people want to know what platform is going viral, which one has easy reach or tons of organic reach. Your process is to start inward. What do I like to create? How do I like to communicate?
What do I buy? Because even when I hear that almost sounds more for like those who are in the educational realm, right? Because with some of the courses and things like that, some people are not going to necessarily feel comfortable doing a course, a digital product, or anything like that, because that's just like a comedian. What do they have business doing a course? Some people are going to feel that way. And so that's why I go, what do you do? What feels comfortable to you? Because you may be like, yo, I'm going to do virtual events. So my monetization format is going to be, I'm going to do exclusive content on Patreon, right? If I was more in the entertainment world, I would do a whole bunch of exclusive content, sell it on my Patreon. Then I would do a live event. Well, I'll do a virtual event just to test the water for that. Then I'll do a live event. On the live event, then I'm selling the merch. I have now, that's a separate thing of monetization right then and there. If I was going more on a motivational side, right? What are some of I think about, and Nipsey says something really that has always been like burnt into me, is like, how do you get creative with the connection? And so when we look at all the followers that we have or that we will have, it's like, what is the experience that we're giving them? And from a digital side and from an in-person side, what is the thing that they will have no doubt in their mind giving out their credit card stuff to, right? How are you making them feel? Is it an experience that makes them feel seen? Because the biggest way to stand out and to make sure they feel comfortable giving any type of money, it could be 3 cents to $3,000, 300,000, is how are you making them feel seen and heard? And that they feel like they're experiencing exactly what they need, right? There has been many people who've gone through courses that are like, it was a waste, right? Because you didn't necessarily give them what they need or made them feel seen in any kind of way. You went based more of a monetization side of things, where when you look the inward and you go, hey, what do I find value? And if my audience is any type of value to me, how can I give them an experience that will make them be like, okay, I have no problem giving you my money, right? And is always understanding the latter, meaning you're going to have an audience with different budgets. There are some people who are going to give you a good amount of money off top. There are some people that are like, I'm at my last 5, but that 3 I could give you of my last 5 because you are different, right? Mm. But in that creator monetization journey, you have to realize what made you feel that way. What made you feel like, this is going to leave me uncomfortable? But I did it anyways because they made me feel this, or they had this and this. And how do you flip it for your audience? And once you do that, then you're like, my monetization journey is dope because it leads up, it creates for all different budgets, but it also increases the experience of how they are introduced to my brand.
I love the way that you framed it, which is, and this is actually what kills people's brands, is you build this audience and this following because, going back to what we said in the beginning, that you made someone, just one person, feel seen.
Yeah.
That was the whole reason they followed you. That was why they commented. That's why they watched your post, or they clicked on your post every single time it showed up in their feed. And then you start thinking about monetization, and it's like you throw all of that out of the window.
You became a salesperson. You never was a salesperson, or you sucked at it. That's why you're trying this. Like it doesn't come natural. And the only thing that has been working in this season, in this time frame, has been those people who are in their natural. That's it. This is why we follow weight loss journeys. This is why we follow reality TV show to a certain extent, because some of them are also scripted or whatever. But this is why now we're starting to see vlogs coming kind of back, right? And this is day 1 of me doing this, day 2 of starting the brand, because we want to follow a journey. And when we follow a journey, and this is why anybody who is getting to the point of I have a product or service and that I want to sell it is, are you taking your audience through the journey of how it happened? Because then you're going to have people who are going to be natural supporters because they were there since day one. They may not even want, my whole goal is, I don't even know if I want this, but I love you so much that I got to get it, right? That because of the connection that we have built. And when you are showcasing that in your content of like, all right, day one of starting this course. Like if I want to do this course, day one of starting this course, I have no outline. That's it, right? It starts to become relatable that when you're not just doing the flashy commercials, the promos and all that great stuff, that looks great and probably costs you a lot of money and time, but it doesn't connect with your audience. Like it looks great, but you're trying to create conversions. But when you show that behind the scenes content of growing it, that's when people are like, oh, he's coming out. The podcast is coming out with socks. I need to get the socks because I saw when they had the bad lighting and everything like that. And he would always go like this and like mess with his socks real quick. Like it represents the journey.
Yeah.
And that's where we're seeing from everything from a Mr. Beast and all these other creators of, I see their journey.
Yeah.
And I want to be a part of it.
You know what's such a great example? There's actually two examples that come to mind. There's this one creator called May Pham. She started producing content when she was like a teenager. I think she's like in her early 20s now. But she does like vlogs and like kind of tracks her life, like living in New York. And she built like a huge following off that. Like she's getting like millions of views on YouTube, basically every video.
Yeah.
And she comes out with this like merch line, like this hoodie line, and it's going crazy.
Yeah.
And it's because of what you mentioned, which is like the reason why people liked her is because she has this really kind of quirky, unique personality on camera. And then the hoodies are just an extension of that.
Yeah.
And so the people that liked her because of that feel like when I buy the hoodie, it's almost like I'm getting a piece of her. Like it feels like her. The second one that comes to mind is someone that I followed since I was 15, who's Andrew Schultz.
Yes.
The comedian.
Yes.
And I watch him, obviously he has all these shows on MTV at the time. He does the podcast, Brilliant Idiots with Charlemagne. He does his own podcast. He's a comedian and even like
just did Madison Square Garden.
And that was like the culmination of everything he'd been building, right?
Yeah.
Which was like, he's such a New York guy. He's like always talking about the Knicks and like being from New York.
Yeah.
He films in New York. He's always been like a comedian stand-up.
Yeah.
And then it's like Madison Square Garden and he sells it out.
Yeah.
And it's because to his audience, that's the culmination of everything they've been watching. It's like the alignment is perfect.
So it's so needed. The creator's journey is what's winning. And it's not about the blueprint of everybody else. It is literally your growth. And the growth is what's attractive to people because you make it seem that it's possible. Right? And this is what doesn't get talked a lot about, that when we talked about earlier of that freedom, you are giving people freedom just by showing up and showing that journey. And so the merch is going to give that sense of freedom, is going to give that sense of confidence. That ticket to the event is going to give that like, yo, one day I could possibly do it, or look at where my man is at right now. This is crazy. Yeah, they may come for the jokes and all that great stuff. Cool. But then even that, you're now giving them a sense of relief, right? From their busy life. Like there is a feeling that through your journey of whatever your journey may be, I don't care if you like paint, I don't care if you create shoes, I don't care what it is. You showing your journey gives some type of feeling and relief from a motivational side, an educational side, and an entertainment side all in one, based off you showing that people who normally would go on TV before is now turning on YouTube and going on TikTok and going on Instagram to get that same relief that they were doing before going to the movie theaters and turning on their favorite sitcom.
You know, it's one of the people that I really look to. You know, when you talk about kind of having these people in your mind,
Yeah.
that's like I just love and admire what they did. For me, Oprah is one of those people,
Yes.
and she says she was describing what she does,
Mm-hmm.
and that's something that I'm always trying to figure out because people always ask me that about the podcast,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like a lot of the times we tell people the what.
Yeah.
So like, oh, I interview entrepreneurs or this sort of thing. No one cares about that.
Mm-mm.
It's like the why, like what is the reason behind it? And the way that she describes it, she says, I share stories so that people can see themselves in others.
Yes.
So she does these interviews and people hear these stories,
Yeah.
and the story is so relatable
Mm-hmm.
that someone can watch and be like, that's me.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's I'm seeing myself
Yeah.
in that. And it's so powerful. And it goes back to the thing that you mentioned right in the beginning when we started talking about content, which is why you have to start with the natural
Yes.
because it needs to feel real.
Oh man, it's funny that you mentioned Oprah because then I thought of two other people that like it screams that Wallow and Wall Street Trapper, right? Two individuals that were locked up, right, and came out and has a huge following for just them being them and the creator journey that they've gone through, right? But their purpose of like why I'm doing it. Like Wallow is like, yo, I came from Philly. I made the wrong decision. I was locked up for like 20 years. And now I have one of the biggest podcast deals out right now. Just being who I am. And I don't want y'all to make that same decision in the beginning that I did. But I'm gonna show you what hard work and consistency does. This man put up his phone and whether it was rain, sleet, snow, or hail, was doing a motivational video every single day, right? Got with his cousin, did a podcast, just being them, and now it's blowing up. Trap made some bad decisions, learned the stock market when he was in jail, and now he communicates to people who look like us on how to get into the stock market, right? He's not code switching and trying to talk to everybody in CNBC and all that stuff. He's like, my purpose is to make sure that we are financially great. And so his creator journey is like, I'm going to show you when I got out my 9-to-5 stuff, but then I'm going to show you that I was in Ellen. Like, I'm going to show you I got my own studio and I'm doing this. I'm going to show you everything. And this is why I say it was super transparent with the journey of I opened up a brokerage account and here's how much I made. Here's how much I lost. Here's what I'm doing. This and the third. And people are now like, between the two of them, they have impacted so many people's lives and making certain different choices because they were just them, right? And their purpose. And this is why when you're starting out your brand on social media of any kind, you have to understand your purpose. The purpose is an important part. With Oprah's purpose, with Wallow's purpose, with Trap's purpose, with majority of these people who we're seeing that are making huge impacts, they have a purpose. And if you don't have that, then your content has no substance. It doesn't mean anything. So, and we'll see that as so many have died out because there was no real purpose. And I'm talking about from a purpose of people, not purpose of self, just purpose of people. It could start with self in the beginning because that's right now that's all you know. But down the line, it has to be about people. And when that happens, Oprah's good. Tyler Perry's good. Like these types of people are good because it's about others and not about self.
Yeah. No, it's so powerful. And you know what? Here's where I want to end, and I want to end by bringing it back to you.
Okay.
Which is, we speak about this moment in your life where you're on a hospital bed, you're in this job, and it's not even that the workplace that you're at is terrible, but it's just not for you.
Yeah.
And you're sick. There's people around you that are telling you like, I don't know if you should be leaving this
Mm-hmm.
job. Like, what are you going to do? Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
How are you going to live? And you're at this point now where not only have you built brands with people that inspire, people every day, millions of people around the world, you've also built this brand yourself. And,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the most important thing, you've built it by being yourself.
Mm-hmm.
The same way that Jay-Z said, like, I show up in every room as Jay, you show up in every room as Nicky.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the thing that I'm curious to understand is we take those two humans, we take the Nicky that was on the hospital bed, and we
Mm-hmm.
take the Nicky that's sitting here with the J's and the red tracksuit and the hat. And they were to meet. I'm just curious, what would you have said to that Nicky?
Probably to the extent of they accept you for you, right? Because looking back, even when I was on the hospital bed, I just didn't necessarily have an identity back then, right? I just did the 9 to 5. I picked the job that would probably transfer the most from a money standpoint because that's what I knew that was supposed to be important. And in looking back at that and seeing where it is now, of like, it's absolutely okay to be transparent that you didn't know who you are, and they're going to accept you regardless. And those people who don't accept you, they're just not for you. That's one of the biggest lessons that I learned, was that you're not for everybody, and which is crazy because, of course, when you get on social media and you try to grow a brand, you're like, yo, I want to reach millions and I want to do this and then and third, and it's like, but we weren't meant to speak to everybody. When we look at it even from a personal standpoint, like, we're not dating everybody. We're not just for everybody. And when you realize, like for me, when I realized that I'm just made to speak to a specific group, and that group is going to love you regardless of your flaws, of your past, of, you know, of your ups and downs, because they go through it the same way. Like, once I realized that, I moved the way I move. And talking to the old Nicky would be like, you're going to figure it out. Just trust this part, because obstacles could look like, I almost committed suicide for one of those times that I just didn't know where I was at, right? But that's because I didn't feel seen and accepted. I could go back and be like, eventually you will. And those moments, the ones that was on the hospital bed, the ones that got into arguments, the ones that felt depressed and thought about crazy things, it's all to know that they're going to accept you one day. And it probably isn't going to be the people that you thought was going to accept you. It's going to be people who you've never met in your life that actually give you more flowers than some of the people that you looked up to. And it's a different feeling, and it's so good. It's such a good feeling.
That's so powerful. Thank you so much for coming on.
Of course.
That's amazing. Thank you.